Rome once burned for 6 days. But some fires don't die in ash. They hide in palaces, behind silks, inside the smile of emperors. This is not the story of love. It is the story of a boy, and the man who turned him into a corpse that could still walk. The most powerful man in the known world stood over a woman's broken body. Her name was Poppaea Sabina, wife to Emperor Nero. Pregnant, beautiful, and dead. They said she had merely complained. A soft protest about his obsession with the races, about his nights spent drunk on theater and applause. Nero had answered with a kick to her belly. 1 strike, maybe 2, maybe more. There was blood. Then silence. No mourning, no repentance, only a theater of grief. The emperor held funerals lined with perfumes and marble. He declared her a goddess. But behind closed doors, his chambers echoed with a single word: replacement. And one day, Rome found it. He had no name, at least not one history allowed him to keep. The name we know, Sporus, was never his. It means seed or semen in Greek, a vulgar joke, a reminder of what he no longer had. He was young, beautiful, delicate enough to haunt. And when Nero saw him, he froze. The boy's face was a mirror of Poppaea's. The same soft eyes, the same bone structure, curved and tragic, a ghost in living flesh. And Nero, god, monster, man-child, decided the ghost would stay. He was taken. No ceremony, no warning. The imperial surgeons came. They carried oil, cloth, and a knife. In Rome, castration wasn't clean. Sometimes they crushed the testicles. Sometimes they sliced them. Sometimes more. Sporus, if that was his name now, never screamed. Or maybe he did. No one wrote it down. He woke in silk. Not a boy, not yet a woman, not quite human. Nero dressed him in Poppaea's gowns, draped pearls around his neck, painted his lips. The emperor whispered pet names into his ear. My wife, my goddess reborn. And in front of the Roman Senate, beneath the sacred sky, Nero married him. It had all the trappings of a Roman wedding: a bridal veil dyed flame orange, a public dowry, guests, applause, ceremony. Only the bride had no womb, no voice, and the groom had murdered his last wife. Nero called him Augusta, empress, a name meant for power. But to the Roman people it was mockery, a grotesque pantomime of marriage, a theater of horror performed on the world's largest stage. The real Poppaea had died under his heel. The new one smiled on command. Some say Sporus cried at night. Others say he said nothing at all. He gifted Nero a ring once, gold, beautiful, expensive, the kind a dutiful wife would give. But engraved in its stone was the myth of Proserpina, the goddess who was abducted, dragged to the underworld, and forced to become a queen in hell, a symbol of violation, of silence. Nero laughed, called it romantic. But perhaps Sporus had spoken louder than he ever could, with words. The empire did not hear him. Rome saw only pearls and perfume. But beneath the veil, there was blood. There are ghosts that wear perfume. There are corpses that still walk, dressed in silks, speaking in borrowed voices. Sporus was not a boy anymore. He was not even Sporus. He was Poppaea, resurrected not by love, but by violence. Rome was a city of masks, and in Nero's palace, the mask had flesh. Sporus walked beside the emperor now, not as a servant, not as a slave, but as an empress. He was paraded through the streets in golden carriages. Praetorian guards bowed to him. He sat beside Nero at games, dinners, councils. But behind the rouge and the amber perfume, he was nothing more than an ornament. A beautiful lie to soothe Nero's guilt. A corpse dressed in memory. And the people whispered, Is it madness? Is it love? Or is it something Rome does not yet have words for? By now, Nero's court had decayed into chaos. He had already married a man before this, a freedman named Pythagoras. In that union, Nero played the bride. But now, with Sporus, he flipped the script. He was the groom. Sporus was the vessel. He kissed him in public, called him Poppaea, even made him perform the duties of an empress, attending imperial banquets, rituals, ceremonies. The Roman senators said nothing, not out of tolerance, but fear. This was not just about sex. This was power, turned inside out. A declaration that Nero could rewrite nature, that he could rebuild the dead. He was no longer a man, not even a tyrant. He was trying to be a god. And what of Sporus? No one wrote his thoughts, no letters, no speeches, no final words. But his silence was deafening. Every time he walked past the golden statues of the real Poppaea, every time Nero whispered her name into his ear, every time he was touched not as himself, but as someone else, something inside him cracked, but not loud enough for Rome to hear. The ring he gifted Nero, carved with the myth of Proserpina, was not a token of love. It was a warning. In that myth, Proserpina is stolen from the earth by Pluto, the god of the underworld. She screams, she weeps, but no one comes. She eats the fruit of the dead and is bound to him for eternity, just like Sporus, forced into the underworld of someone else's desire, made to wear a crown not out of honor, but as a punishment. Nero looked into Sporus's face and saw Poppaea. But what did Sporus see looking back? A stranger? A boy mutilated into memory? Or the hollowed-out shell of someone who had been rewritten by empire? Either way, there was no escape. He slept beside the man who killed his predecessor. He dined with senators who applauded her murder. He was applauded for becoming the perfect illusion. And deep down, Sporus knew. He was not the empress of Rome. He was the reminder of Nero's sin, a wound with a crown. He bore the skin of Poppaea, but his soul was his own. And that is what made the mask a prison. In Rome, marriage was a sacred bond, a ceremony of gods and ancestors, a promise between equals. But not this one. This was not a union. It was a performance, a spectacle of madness. The day Sporus was married to Nero was not hidden in shadow. Rome was invited. Senators, nobles, priests, even generals stood in attendance. And there he was, the boy with no name, no voice, no past, walking down an imperial aisle in full bridal regalia. A veil of saffron silk draped his face. Jewels glittered on his wrists and throat. His hair, curled and perfumed like Poppaea's, bounced with every step. He was beautiful. He was broken. And he was now the Empress of Rome. The ceremony was performed as if it were real. There was a dowry. There were vows. There was even a mock priest, handpicked by Nero himself. The crowd clapped. Some laughed. Others whispered behind their hands. But no one objected. Because when an emperor tells a lie, Rome learns to believe it. And that night, in the palace once ruled by true queens, Nero celebrated his bride. Musicians played, dancers twirled, wine flowed like rivers, and somewhere behind closed doors, another crime was sealed in candlelight. Days became weeks, and Sporus, or the idea of Sporus, became a fixture in court. He sat on Poppaea's throne. He wore Poppaea's gowns. He signed her name. To the public, he was simply she now. Not Sporus, not even a eunuch, but a ghost made flesh by imperial command. No one asked what he wanted. No one could. The Romans whispered stories, how Nero kissed him like a lover and called him, "my dear wife." how he praised Sporus's beauty in front of visiting kings, how he laughed when guests couldn't hide their horror. It was a joke, a dark joke. But for Sporus, there was no punchline, and always, the shadow of Poppaea lingered. The wife Nero had kicked to death in a fit of rage. The unborn child her body had carried, crushed beneath imperial sandals. Suetonius tells us Nero mourned her terribly. He embalmed her in rare spices. He built monuments. He wept theatrically at her tomb. But those were tears shed after the act. Tears shed by a man who never learned love, only ownership. Sporus was not her replacement. He was her reconstruction, a walking apology, a living doll dressed in guilt and fantasy. You may think this was a wedding, but it was not. It was a ritual, to bury a crime beneath silks and smiles. It was not a union of hearts. It was the sealing of a tomb. What gift does a slave give to his God? What can the silent offer the one who silenced him? A symbol, a mirror too cruel to look into, too perfect to deny. One day Sporus, the empress not by choice but by decree, placed a small box into Nero's hand. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a ring. A delicate band of gold, crowned by a carved gemstone. Engraved on that stone was a scene, subtle but unmistakable, the rape of Proserpina. In Roman myth, Proserpina was a maiden of light. She was abducted by Pluto, god of the underworld, and dragged into the depths. There she was forced to become his queen. 6 months above the earth, 6 months in the dark. A beautiful myth, a horrifying metaphor. And now, a quiet rebellion. Historians still argue about the meaning of the ring. Was it Nero's idea? A twisted joke from a man who loved theater? Or was it Sporus, reaching through his silence, offering the only truth he could? A scream without a voice, a protest carved in stone, a message. I know what I am. I know what you've done. I am not your empress. I am your prisoner. For Nero, the ring may have meant nothing, or worse, everything. Perhaps he wore it as a badge, a reminder that he had done what no Roman before him dared. He had rewritten gender, power, and grief into a single living being. Sporus was his art, his revenge on morality, his answer to the gods. If Poppaea was lost, he would build her again. And if Rome hated it, all the better. When gods fall, the vultures circle, and Sporus, the boy-turned bride, would become the prize of Rome's dying throne. In 68 AD, Nero's empire collapsed under its own rot. The Senate declared him an enemy of the state. The Praetorian Guard abandoned him, and in a borrowed villa outside Rome, surrounded by whispers and betrayal, Nero slit his own throat. His final words? Qualis artifex perio? What an artist dies in me. He died not as a god or an emperor, but as a performer clinging to his final line. And what of Sporus? He was taken like a relic, not freed, not forgotten, claimed. By Nymphidius Sabinus, a Praetorian prefect drunk on ambition. Sabinus paraded Sporus through Rome like treasure, dressed in Poppaea's gowns, called empress, kissed in public. He believed possessing Sporus gave him legitimacy. But power in Rome changed hands like a blade. Soon, Sabinus was murdered by his own men, and Sporus was passed again, this time to Otho, one of the 4 emperors of the chaotic year that followed. Otho too had once been married to Poppaea, a strange, vicious echo. Was it nostalgia, envy, or some shared madness? The answer didn't matter. Sporus had no choice in the matter either way. Then came Vitellius, brutal, gluttonous, and fond of blood-soaked entertainments. When he laid eyes on Sporus, he saw not a victim, but a performance opportunity. He ordered that the boy be dressed once again as Proserpina, not for marriage, but for murder. He would be raped in public, on the stage of the Colosseum, in a mock ritual reenactment of Proserpina's abduction. Not myth, not metaphor. Theater as execution. And so, Sporus, the boy without a name, the empress without a soul, stood at the edge of the arena. He had survived Nero. He had survived the madness of Rome. But this he would not survive. Rather than endure the humiliation, Sporus took his own life. Just 1 year after Nero's death, the empress vanished. No grave, no statue, no voice, just silence. Sporus was not a hero. He was not a rebel. He was not a god. He was a boy. And then, he was nothing. Not because he was weak, but because no one ever gave him the chance to be anything else. His name was never truly known. His words were never truly heard. But his body was made into a message. Sporus, a name that meant seed, semen, or perhaps nothing at all, became a symbol of everything the Roman Empire tried to hide. The violence behind decadence, the silence beneath power, the unbearable cost of being desired by a god in human skin. He was turned into a wife, though he was no woman. He was forced into love, though he had no say. He was paraded like an empress, but given no throne, no voice, no peace. His life was not a love story. It was a horror show wearing the mask of ceremony. Rome celebrated dominance. To be a man meant to penetrate, to conquer, to own. Those who submitted, women, slaves, eunuchs, were less than men. And so they could be anything or nothing. Even an emperor like Nero in all his power could play with roles, be the groom, the bride, the god, the monster. But Sporus had no mask, only a scar. And through that scar, we see the truth. Ancient historians, Suetonius, Dio Cassius, wrote of Sporus only to mock Nero. To them, the marriage was madness. The eunuch empress was grotesque theater. The entire affair was just another nail in Nero's bloody coffin. But beneath their sneers, the horror remains. A boy, mutilated, dressed, displayed, discarded. Sporus was not just a character in Nero's tragedy, he was the cost of it. They called him Sporus, but we will call him what he was. A boy made into a queen, a symbol made into a silence, a life erased, then remembered. Because empires fall, but pain remembers. And sometimes, even from the ugliest seed, a bitter truth can grow.